Hi, I'm Jenny and this is my channel, Designs with Paper. I am so glad you stopped by today. Last week I showed you some images that I had practiced coloring in shades of black. Today I want to show you how I learned to color white. You cannot just stamp or draw something on a piece of white paper and leave it white and have it look finished. It looks flat, there's no dimension to it, and it really does look undone. So over the few years that I have been practicing with my Copic markers and colored pencils and other mediums, I have kind of found my own groove in how to color things white, which sounds really weird. So today I will be using Copic markers, Prismacolor pencils again, but this time I'm going to use the Arteza Real Brush watercolor pencil or watercolor markers. I have more shades of the Arteza brand than I have of the Zig brand, and they work a little bit differently. My Zigs don't work well with water, but they are awesome with a blender pen. The Arteza brand work much better with water on watercolor paper than with a blender. In fact, I don't have great luck using a blender pen and the Arteza markers at all. Just me, my experience, and it's rather limited. So let me know what you've learned about coloring something white. I know, totally weird. Who would have thought we had to color something white? Thanks for stopping by, and I really hope you enjoy and you learned something new. All right, so let's practice coloring things white. I have this flower I stamped. It's an Altenew stamp. This cake is a Hero Art stamp, and this little baby t-shirt is Clearly Besotted, and it is stamped on watercolor paper. I will be using warm gray Copic markers. I will be using Arteza brush pens and Prismacolor pencils. I have brought in a colorless blender for my Copics, a colorless blender for my pencils, and a water brush. So let's get started. We're going to start with our Copics and this cake. And I am using the warm grays, and I'm using W00, W1, and W3. And I will start with the W3 in the darkest places. Now, I know that last week I told you I always laid down a lighter color first so that it would blend. I do that always except for when I am coloring white. So I'm taking the W3 and I am putting it where there would be shadows. And on this cake, I am going with a front light or a center light. So the shadows are on the side, and that kind of helps it look round. I've also added some shadow to the bottom where it's sitting on the platter and on the top of the bottom tier. Once I have the W3 in, I will blend that out with a W1 and then blend it out again with a W00, and then, if needed, a colorless blender. Now for the flower. And dude, I should totally have traded the flower for the Copics and done the cake with the pencils because I am so much faster with my Copic markers. Anyways, so for this flower, I have chosen the French grays again because that's what I used last time coloring the black panda. And I am using the lightest 3 pencils. And for this flower, I think it's a peony. It's an Altenew stamp. I think it's their peonies. I went in and laid down my shadow with this darkest of my light colors. I think it's like the 30%. And I just put some of that anywhere that one petal laid on top of another petal. Now, I'm not going to have color on all of the petal. In fact, I will hardly pull any of the color out at all. I am just adding in the shadow. The way that our eye interprets white is the shadows. It's very similar to how we interpret dark or black. It's all about the shadows and the highlights. So now I have taken that second darkest of the light colors. I think it's a 20% French gray. And I'm starting on the dark and pulling it out just a little bit more. Just a little. And you can see the shadows are starting to evolve. The coolest thing about coloring white flowers is when you add the greenery to it. And I wish I had done that so you could see how it goes from looking colored gray to really popping and reading white. But anyways, then I went through and pulled in the lightest color. I think it's a 10%. And then I pulled in my colorless blender. This is a pencil that has no pigment. It's just a blender. And I went back in with that darkest, the 30% French brown or whatever it's called, French gray. There we go, French gray. And added some more dimension on some of those places where I felt like there needed to be just a little bit more of a deep shadow, especially as I got toward the middle of that flower. And I'm just going to keep going back and forth and blending it out until I feel like it's looking done. So here I've moved on to that little baby t-shirt, and this is my Arteza brand brush watercolor markers. And I'm using, gosh, I don't even know what color it is. I don't even remember. I didn't write it down, and I filmed this forever ago. Anyways, I'm just taking that light gray or that taupey gray, it's kind of a warm gray, and putting it in the shadow. And then I'm using that watercolor brush to pull the shadow out or pull the color out to where they're, so that it's blending. And I am using watercolor paper here because I am using water. I have tried using these Arteza pens on Bristol like I do with the Zigs, and it just does not work for me. Does not work for me. So you have to kind of try and see what works for you. Anyways, so we're just going to add the color, darken the color, and I'm using one pen. I used one pen and just kept adding layers and layers until it was the shadow I wanted. So here are some images. I hope that they didn't photograph super great because there was no other color in it, but I hope you learned a little bit something about how to color images white. Hey, thanks for stopping by, and give me a thumbs up or a like or a subscribe. Bye.